As a person who grew up in the 90s, you would be hard-pressed to find someone else who appreciates the success that The Rock has achieved in his career more than I do. He transcended the business of professional wrestling, which happens to be where I became a fan of his in the first place, and he rose to become one of the biggest stars in the world. He is the highest paid actor in Hollywood, and he has his hands in everything from football to wrestling. And I'm not taking anything away from his accomplishments. He earned all of that through hard work and perseverance. My issue is that more often than not, a lot of the things he does and the things that he is involved with aren't being done for the fans, but simply to feed his own massive-sized ego. And as you all know, I stand with fandom, first and foremost, because typically no one else will. For a guy who used to call himself the people's champion, he seems to be pretty out of touch with what the people actually want. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So about a year ago, I made a video on the channel prior to Black Adam's release. And the title of that video was Nobody Cares About Black Adam. The Rock exposes his ego. Now, I had a lot of people take issue with that video, but as with most of my videos, typically these people are completely missing the point. You see, a lot of people who respond to me are reacting out of pure emotion. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here creating content and thinking about things logically. And when it came right down to it, that video was about general audiences not caring about the character of Black Adam enough to justify that character getting his own solo film. Some of you on the internet might have cared, The Rock himself might have cared, but overall general audiences don't even know who the Black Adam is. And The Rock, being the egomaniac that he is, was trying to sell everyone on the idea that this character's story was worth the price of admission.
You serious?
He was not listening to fans who rightfully criticized the fact that Black Adam should have been a villain in a Shazam movie first and foremost. The Rock saw things differently and he wanted to put the spotlight on him. And in his mind, he was the guy that was going to single-handedly save the floundering DCEU. To his credit, he did listen to fans in one aspect when he brought back Henry Cavill's Superman, but even that, thinking about it now and knowing what we know now, feels like it was done to appease The Rock more than anyone. Because by putting Black Adam face to face with the Superman, in The Rock's mind, this legitimized the character. But we all know the truth because what ended up happening? Exactly what I said would happen, virtually nobody cared, and the film ended up flopping.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
And rightfully so, because again, to me, it was mostly forgettable. And then we have The Rock's involvement in the Fast and Furious franchise, which whether people like these movies or not, you have to admit that they've been mostly financially successful. And I'll give The Rock credit here. His introduction into this franchise in Fast 5 was the shot of adrenaline that this franchise desperately needed. But as with anything else with The Rock, he got greedy and once again wanted to put the spotlight back on himself. Now at the time, I didn't understand why some Fast cast members were upset with the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff. But again, thinking back on it and knowing what we know now, it all makes sense. He held up future installments of the main Fast franchise, so once again he could feed his ego and somehow make a even worse movie than the movies we've been getting in that series.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.
And of course, Vin Diesel, being yet another egomaniac, clashed with The Rock, and this caused them to go their separate ways. And then The Rock finagled his way back into this franchise when the well dried up elsewhere, because of course he did. He's probably plotting on how to make this franchise about him again as we speak. So this is two examples of The Rock going into business for himself, going behind people's backs, and doing what's best for The Rock. Which brings me to his recent return to WWE and professional wrestling. This is the place where it all began for him. Now, I realize that a lot of you probably don't even watch wrestling, so I'm not going to bore you with a lot of the details, but this story is worth bringing up because it is relevant to this whole Rock conversation.
That makes sense.
So for those that don't know, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was recently added to the TKO Board of Directors, which is basically the parent company that now owns the WWE. Now on the surface, this would sound like a great thing for wrestlers of present day, to have one of their own, or at least someone who knows what they are going through day to day, making decisions that impact their career. But unfortunately, we quickly found out that The Rock is so far removed from that world that he isn't going to be much benefit to those people at all. To give you the short version of this situation, the WWE has been building a storyline around current superstar Cody Rhodes for the past 2 years. And the story is supposed to culminate at this year's biggest event of the year with him winning the World Heavyweight Championship. And he's supposed to win that championship from the final boss himself, Roman Reigns, who has held the title for now close to 4 years. It should also be noted that The Rock and Roman Reigns are related, by the way.
Wait a minute. Hang on a second.
So The Rock returned recently, and a storyline was written for Cody Rhodes for him to basically hand this moment he earned over to The Rock, so The Rock could have that moment instead. You guys know by now, if you've been watching me for any amount of time, that when it comes to movies or any kind of story being told, I value logic. I value things that make sense. And I don't really like having my time wasted. Now, I don't watch the product as religiously as I used to in my younger days, but I am aware of what's been going on. So this whole situation basically stinks of The Rock once again meddling in someone else's plans. And once again, him putting himself at the forefront where he does not belong. And for those of you who are going to say that The Rock is box office, The Rock is a big name. He's going to bring in a lot of business and put eyes on the product. I don't give a shit about the business side of this equation. And I don't really care how outside people view this situation. As always, I care about getting the best story possible and the best product possible. So if we take all of this into consideration, Rock's patterns of making things about him instead of doing what's best for the product, all of this makes it very difficult for me to be able to support this man in the future. Someone in his position could be pushing new stars to the moon in any field that he touches. But he would rather hold on to that spotlight and not give anyone else their shine. And I'm sorry, but I really can't respect anyone who moves that way. I can't respect anyone who undermines another person or undermines an entire brand just to maintain his own status.
This is Rock! I can't get jiggy with this shit!
When it comes right down to it, I expect better from The Rock. And I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed in him. I'm disappointed that he appears to not be the person that I always thought he was. The Rock, unfortunately, is at a point in his career where a lot of the things he touches actually gets worse. What is the last memorable Rock role or Rock movie that is worth talking about? You can't give me an answer because there is no answer. The guy has been playing the same character dressed in a tan safari suit for years now. Phoning it in, collecting a paycheck, and feeding his ego. All while operating under the facade that he's a good guy and he does everything for the fans. Well, Dwayne, the first step in doing things for the fans is actually listening to the fans. And right now, your return is one of the most disliked videos in WWE history on YouTube.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
So are you going to take notice of that and learn from that? Have you learned from the fact that you were adamant about making a DC movie that ultimately nobody cared about? I guess only time will tell, but if the rumors are true, that The Rock views himself as a savior of sorts, as he's tried to save the Fast franchise, he's tried to save WWE, and he's tried to save DC, and he probably will fail at all of them. It's starting to feel like that the only thing The Rock truly cares about is himself. And as someone who has supported him for a very long time, that is unfortunate.
Y'all be cool. Right on.